What's going on, guys? This is BunnyMuffins. Today we are going to take a look at the new patch 11.16, which is very welcome because we were playing on the last patch for quite a bit of time. But the thing about this week is that there are so many different comps you can play that I kind of spread out the tier list a lot more than I normally do. So normally when you guys look at the tier list, you're like, oh, only play S and A tier builds, play B tiers if you really are forced to, and then play the C tiers after that. That kind of got shuffled around a bit because I think everything in the S, A, and B tier, you can play these in a lot of your games. The C tiers aren't actually that bad. They're just slightly worse than everything else, and it was too hard to just spread everything else without doing it this way or creating a D tier. But best comp by far, it's going to be Aboms. And keep in mind, guys, right after I go through this overview of the tier list, we're going to go over how to play each and every one of these comps and what changed week to week, because that is very important too. And hopefully you guys will see some of the spicy changes. Maybe you guys heard of them or saw them before, maybe you did not, but that is why we do these, right? So yeah, Aboms just by far the best right now, even after the Sunfire Cape nerf. In terms of like the best comp, they're just so far ahead of everyone else. It's not to say that you can't play anything else, but if you have a chance to go for Aboms, just go for it, man. A tier Hellion reroll, still pretty impressive with Tristana. They weren't really touched too much by the patch, in my opinion at least. Invokers, this is the late game dream. After that, we have Riven. Riven's a new comp to this list. I used to list this out in the Dawnbringer build, but you don't really play Riven in 6 Dawnbringer, so we are going to go over the build on that shortly. Aphelios and Akshan, they're going to be great just because Akshan's so good and Aphelios is a way to get to action. Sentinels, this comp dropped down a lot. I used to have this in S tier, but I feel like it just fell down like just a tiny bit compared to last week. After that, we go into the B tier where you're going to start off with the Nightbringer Aphelios build. We're going to start with the Nightbringer Yasuo build, followed by Redeemed Velkoz, then Assassins, then Forgotten Draven, then Skirmishers. All these are pretty much on the same power level. I'd say Nightbringer Yasuo and Redeemed Velkoz slightly better. Assassins are a personal favorite, but they're ranked pretty low just because a lot of the good players don't like Assassins quite yet. But in terms of like playing Assassins, I think they're really fun and like pretty straightforward to do in most games. After that, in the C tier, Dawnbringer, Karma, and Cannoneer Cavaliers are going to be dropped down here. It's not that they're bad, they're just like so many other good playable comps. You don't have like time to play these comps unless you're playing like 50 games in the patch or something like that. Maybe like 2 of them will be a Dawnbringer, Karma, and Cavalier comp. But if I was like playing like 40 games or like 30 games or 20 games, like these top comps, like this is all you need, you know? You don't need to get too fancy with something else. But yeah, let's get into how to play each comp. We're going to go over like core items. We're going to do like what leveling pattern to use and all that type of good stuff. So first up, Abominations. You guys may have noticed a slight change already. Before we were doing Zyra, then we were doing Heimerdinger, but now you could still do Vel'Koz as well. And it's very interesting. I'm surprised that this wasn't done that much before, but you think of Zyra items, you're using Shojin, Jeweled Gauntlet, Archangels. Heimer uses the same thing, which we've discussed before. But Vel'Koz, he uses very similar items as well. He uses Shojin and the Jeweled Gauntlet too. So you just switch the Archangels for a Hand of Justice for some healing. And then you're pretty much good to go there. Like, look at this. It's the same stuff. Just a slight variation where you add in 3 Redeemed because Vel'Koz is really good with the Redeemed. So you add in Lux and Rel instead of Lulu and Callista. So you just run 3 Abominations with this build. You could also add in more Spellweavers if you have the room to do so and you don't hit stuff like Volibear. But I've been liking this a lot, honestly, guys, because they just use the same items and you don't always get a Heimerdinger. You don't always get a Zyra 3, but you pretty reliably get a Vel'Koz 2-star, which is why this is pretty interesting to try. And a lot of people are not playing Vel'Koz at all. So that means you get Vel'Koz pretty easily because no one plays the redeemed version that often. Like, some people will do it, but it's not common by any means. So the way to play this comp, you do either a slow roll for Zyra 3 or you go level 8 quickly for Heimer or Vel'Koz. So we're probably going to do the level 8 version this week because the 2 builds that I think you guys should be playing is the Vel'Koz and the Heimerdinger version. All right, let's get into the next comp where we are in the A tiers Hellion reroll. This one I changed up a little bit too. So I've been noticing a lot of the really high level players, they've been putting all their dudes on the back line. Whereas before we were putting some dudes in the front, and you may have noticed we're not running Cavaliers before. Before we had Kled and Rel, we're going to replace that with Ziggs and a Galio. Galio's like a pretty logical replacement for Rel, and then Ziggs is just the other Hellion. Just a note, Senna can be any Cannoneer. It doesn't have to be Senna, just literally anyone would do. But when you do this, the enemy teams have to spread out a lot more. And I think the primary reason why you do this is that it gives your Tristana a lot more time to do a lot of her attacks. And when you don't have Cavaliers rushing to the front, your tanks live like just a split second longer, and the unit aggro just works out in a better way for this composition. So just like a small change like that for this week could mean a lot in terms of power level for the comp. Also, just to note, you don't have to go 6 Hellion. You could go 4 Hellion instead and just flex in other random synergies. And you could take out Ziggs and Poppy or Teemo if you haven't hit him yet. So the way you want to play this comp is re-roll for Tristana 3-star on level 6. That's going to give you both the most gold to roll for her and the highest chances of getting her to 3-star, because that's where 2-cost units are shown the most. And you also want to pick up Kennen 3-star if you can as well. He is like very critical for the comp too. A lot of people, they think it's like a Tristana build, but Kennen's like with a Morella, with a GA, he's going to be doing a lot of work for your team as well. Onto the next build, we have Invokers. So this is just like the late game, like wet dream, but you can get into this comp from a lot of different angles. But if you manage to do it, you are going to be winning a lot of games. That's why I keep it in this tier list, but maybe I'll remove it once people stop kind of playing this. Not because it'd be bad, but the way to get to this comp, the meta just has to allow for it, which isn't always the case in certain weeks. So onto the next build, we have Riven carry. This is the new build we have for this week. And Riven, he doesn't need the Dawnbringers, as I said before. Like, you just run 2 or 4. If you're running 4, you want to add in Garen and Soraka and take out stuff like Nautilus and Jax and add in Viego and the 2 Dawnbringers. But this comp is a reroll at level 7 comp because you're going for 3-star Riven. And then I like to do a secondary carry as well. The secondary carry can either be Jax or Nidalee. In this version, we're running Jax, but if you're running the other version, you use your other Dawnbringers to kind of carry the game for you. You kind of use the Dawnbringers as the secondary carries. But essentially, best items on Riven, you want the RFC and the Runons. After that, the third item can kind of be anything. Well, not anything, but anything attack damage oriented. So stuff like Last Whisper is good, Hand of Justice is decent. Some people use stuff like Bloodthirster as well on her if you want more healing. All of them are good options. It really just depends on how the fights are going, if you need the regen, if you need the raw damage, if you need the armor penetration. Pretty much all depends on that. But the most important things are the rapid fire cannon and the Runons. But yeah, this is a new comp, so if you want to try this, because we separated it from the Dawnbringer build, go ahead and do it this week because it might get popular because it's actually pretty strong right now. Aphelios is going to be the next build. This build dropped down a little bit. Aphelios is always really weird. He either has enough time to ramp up and destroy everyone, or he doesn't. So he's always like kind of hit or miss depending on what comps are being played that week. But right now I think he's like still decent. We're doing the same build from last week, but you want to prioritize action items a little more than you did compared to the previous weeks, because it turns out like even level 1 action does quite a bit of work, whereas most other legendaries, you want them 2-star before they actually shine. Like Heimerdinger, if you're playing the Abom comp or the Invoker comp, the difference between Heimer 1 and Heimer 2 is like so big, it's not even funny. I mean, it's pretty big difference for action as well, but he's still usable in this Ranger build at 1-star, at least in my opinion. And you could go for Nightbringer. You could drop down to 2 as well and play other synergies such as more Ironclad, maybe some Mystics if you want to as well, or some random legendary units. Some people like throwing in Ivern, Volibear, and Fiddlesticks in every composition just because they are just one of the best tank lines in the game, so like it's kind of a why not. But this comp, you are doing a regular leveling pattern. We're going back to standard leveling because whenever you're going for a 4-cost carry, and look how many 4-costs we have, guys. We have Rel, Galio, Diana, and Aphelios. And then if you're playing the 2 Nightbringer version, you're running like even more 4-cost units. You want to be level 8 to do that, and then hopefully you get to level 9 and then get action there after you have all the 2 stars upgraded. So onto the next build, we have Sentinels. I separated this out into 2 different builds because there is a 6 Sentinel Lucian version, which I like playing just because it's easier to do. But a lot of people are playing the 3 Sentinel version, which is a lot more flexible. So I have the core build of that up here, and then I have the full Sentinel, 6 Sentinel build down here. So if you're playing the 3 Sentinel version, you want to add in stuff like Ironclads. We have like Nautilus, Rel, you could throw in a Jax if you want. Some people like running Cannoneers. Some people like running the Ivern, Volibear, Fiddlesticks combo that we talked about before. Some people like adding in Mystics. It really depends what you're facing in the game. But this is kind of like the core that I generally use because you need the Sentinel, so you need Lucian, Senna, and Galio. After that, for tankiness, Nautilus and Rel. Nautilus gives Knight, and then Rel gives the Ironclad. But you could even drop these 2 for other things. But Rel's just so strong that she's played in so many different comps, and Rel on one side, Galio on the other, you can't really complain about that tank line. But I guess you could even drop this down to the core build of just the 3 Sentinels if you want to do it even further, and pretty much just flex 5 units instead of just 3. But I list out more units here just because it makes it a little easier to play in case you guys are going for this type of build. Of course, we're going to do a standard leveling pattern because we are on 4-cost carries, and yeah, pretty much that is going to be it for this composition. It was S tier before. It's dropped down to A tier now. It's still good, but like Abominations are just so much better than every other comp right now. Now we are onto the B tier. We're going to start off with Nightbringer Yasuo. Yasuo is very similar to Riven. So if you're going for like that type of build, they complement each other because they're both legionnaires, right? So you could decide which comp you're going for, like kind of in the middle of the roll down. If you're seeing a lot of Yasuos, go for Yasuo 3. If you're seeing a lot of Rivens, go for Riven 3 because they even use the same items. Rapid Fire Cannon and Runon's Hurricane are going to be your bread and butter for those two guys. So with that in mind, like, what do you want to use to complement Yasuo? Well, instead of Dawnbringers, you're going to use Nightbringers. You're still going to fit in the 3 skirms like we saw before. You could even use Jax as a secondary carry too. However, in this comp, I kind of like spamming Zeke's Heralds to buff my Yasuo more. Whereas Riven, I'd prefer having like a Jax secondary carry. Just because Yasuo is able to like completely 1v9 with Zeke's. Whereas Riven, she still can do it, but just not as effectively as Yasuo. But Yasuo is weird. Like, if I have a Riven 2-star and I'm hard stuck Riven 2, I'd rather be hard stuck Riven 2 than hard stuck Yasuo 2. But if I were to choose a 3-star version, I think Yasuo 3 is better than Riven 3. That's just a personal feel. In-game, it might feel different depending on who you're facing in your lobbies. But yeah, for this comp, you want to slow roll at level 7 because we're going for 3-star Yasuo. And yeah, he's a 3-cost unit, so level 7 is the best time to roll for him there. Just as a note, when you are doing a slow roll 7 strategy, keep in mind that the chances of getting a 3-cost unit are the same at level 7 and level 8. So if you do have enough gold to do both, go ahead and go up to level 8 if you're adding in an extra synergy and then continue the slow roll there. Or do like your all-in for Yasuo 3 there if you're a couple units off. After that, we have Vel'Koz 6 Redeem. Vel'Koz actually picked up a little bit in popularity recently. Before he was in like piss low B tier, but now he's in like, he's still like low in the B tier, but he's actually good, you know, like better than he was before. And I think it's just because no one's going Vel'Koz, so it's easy to hit because he's just not that popular right now. Which makes him pretty good. Also, like, no one plays Garen, and Garen's going to be, again, like, a bread and butter carry for this comp. So you throw in Garen. Obviously, Volibear's contested because everyone is so in love with the Revenants right now. But you get the items on Vel'Koz. You play the 6 Redeemed. You could also do 3 Redeemed builds as well if you're feeling a little ambitious. And then throw in a bunch of random tanks and mystics to buy time for him. For leveling, we'll do standard leveling because, again, we're going for 4 costs. So that should be pretty straightforward there. Next up, we have Assassins, my favorite build of the week, because Nocturne's just so fun to play. I don't know what it is. I just love seeing him jump to the back and kind of just like spin around in circles a bunch. They added a new scaling to him. He scales from AP now, so maybe the Rage Blade does a little more than just grant attack speed now. I think overall his damage, it feels around the same, but let me know what you guys think of the changes to Nocturne in the comments below. And while you're doing that, go ahead and like the video if you are enjoying what you're seeing already, and subscribe if you have not already. But this build, you want to go for Assassin. If you have Assassin Spatula, go for 6. You need to add in Kha'Zix. And then I like putting Assassin Spat on Fiddlesticks because he is going to be the secondary carry of the comp. Frontline's just going to be the generic Revenants. You know, it's a little boring, but like when you're running Nocturne and Revenants are so good, you kind of have to run the other Revenants as well. In fact, I think the only thing stopping Nocturne from being an even better comp is the fact that all the Revenants are being contested. So if they were not, let's say Revenants were weak, this comp would be actually stronger because less people would be going for like all your legendaries and 4-cost units. It's a little bit of a weird relationship like that, but you know, that's how TFT goes sometimes when you're kind of in like a free-for-all game mode. Leveling pattern, if you guys can guess already, it is going to be a slow roll at level 7 because you really want Nocturne 3 to carry the late game. Because if you're hard stuck Nocturne 2, you're just not going to have a good time. This is definitely like a hit or miss composition. Next up, we have Forgotten Draven. Draven just kind of like worst 4-cost in the game by far, I think. Doesn't mean he's like horrible and to never play him, but 6 Forgotten, 4 Forgotten, that's going to be the 2 builds you're going to go for on him, depending on what other units you hit during the game. The advantage of going 4 Forgotten is that you don't have to run crappy units like Vayne and Misfortune. Not that they're like horrible, but they just don't complement Draven that well. And then you could add in other random synergies after that. Next build, we have Skirmishers. Skirmisher Knights, nothing changed there from last week. This build's pretty straightforward. Put a bunch of attack damage items on Jax. Some people like putting Runons and RFC on him as well. Or you could do like the full frontline damage as we have here. Just make sure he's not the first one focused every single fight. And when I do this, I typically like putting Redemption on my team, either on Galio, Garen, or Aurelia. sometimes even Rel. Whoever's next to Jax, just throw the redemption on them. But pretty simple comp. You go level 8, go for 4-cost carries. You're also looking for Galio and Rel, and then just make sure you're running at least 3 Skirmisher. You could also go 6 Skirm. I haven't seen it too much, but who knows? Maybe that build is back because you do like some sort of different positioning, because there are a lot of different tricks you could do to kind of enhance each team. Onto the C tier, we have Dawnbringer Karmas. Again, the C tiers this week, they're not horrible. Normally I say don't play C tiers, but like there's just no reason to, you know? But if you really want to, play the Dawnbringer Karma. She is going to be with 6 Dawnbringer, a bunch of AP items. Blue buff is going to be her mana item of choice, and buff her up with like Chalice of Powers. After that, Cavalier, Cannoneer. I know a lot of people like this comp a lot because it's like a low-level reroll comp, but if you're doing like a low-cost reroll, why not do Tristana, for example? Because Tristana, you get to roll for both Kennen and Tristana at level 6, whereas this one, you're looking for a 2-cost and a 3-cost carry. It's kind of awkward because it's hard to get both of them done because you are rolling at suboptimal times for at least one of them, depending on what level you roll at. Whereas all the other reroll comps, they kind of have 2 things to go for on a certain level. So that's kind of why I don't like this comp as much. Also, like sometimes it's contested a bit. It's always one of those things where it's like you see no one playing it, and then the time you want to play it, other people are playing it as well. And it could get a little annoying there because the power spike of it isn't as big as the other reroll. Last comp is Kayle Knights. Kayle, she's just impossible to balance, right? Like she's either the strongest champ in the game or she's the weakest champ in the game just because of how she works, because she either scales infinitely or she just gets left in the dust. But play this at your own risk. I didn't really change too much of the item priorities this week. It really just depends on what comps you play, because there are so many comps right now that are playable. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So what I suggest is kind of have like 1 comp for each item start, or have like 2 comps for 1 item start and just focus on like really getting that item. A couple of different options there. Of course, you could still do a 1 trick. A lot of people just do that. And like it depends on how you learned how to play TFT. Some people, they like adapting in every situation. Some people only play 1 comp. Some people flex between 2 or 3. And some people flex 2 or 3 based on 1 item, or they have 1 comp for each item path, such as AP and AD. So it really depends on what your playstyle is. I'd say just stick to that if you're looking to climb the fastest and you don't want to go through like a learning curve of learning a new playstyle. Obviously, like flexing everything is theoretically the best if we were all computers, but we are not computers. So just some things to keep in mind there. But yeah, whatever item you get, it's really dependent on what comp you're playing. Like if you're going for Aphelios and Draven and Lucian, like probably want the sword. If you're going for Aboms, you want a belt because you want Sunfire Cape. Oh yeah, Sunfire Cape got nerfed. It's still really good because so many people build Warmog, so many people are playing like super tanky frontliners. And a lot of people have healing on stuff like Bloodthirster, Jax, and Riven. So it's still a really good item even though they nerfed it. Yeah, that is pretty much it today. If you guys want to check out the FAQ, go ahead and go on my website, BunnyMuffins.lol, along with having like a quick reference chart for everything that we just went over. So for those of you who are new, I do update this every single Friday, so go ahead and subscribe for that if you are not already. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe, and of course smash that like button. Each like is an LP I gain before the next video.